iPhone 12 Pro versus 12 Pro Max. Can you really tell the difference with the improved cameras on the 12 Pro Max? We're going to find out in this video, so stay tuned. How's everyone, Grant here? Welcome back to another camera comparison video. I've got the top two iPhones out right now, the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, the iPhone 12 Pro's got a great camera, but the Pro Max is supposed to have a slightly better zoom and better low light performance due to its improved main sensor, which has slightly larger pixels to help in low light. But does the Pro Max really produce better images and video than the iPhone 12 Pro? We're gonna find out in this video. I'm gonna show you a bunch of photos and videos so you can decide for yourself which of these two phones and cameras might be best for you, depending on performance and price. So let's go ahead and take a look at the photos and videos, and I'll come back at the end and I'll let you know what I thought about how each of these phones performed. Hey everyone, so we're in the park testing out the video on both the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 12 Pro. Starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on each, so you can see what that looks like on both phones here. You pan down, see the exposure in the sky, how that gets light. As I pan back up, it readjusts. We'll go ahead and change to the main wide angle lens on both. There you go, so you can see what that looks like now. Same thing, we'll pan around and pan back up. You can see the exposure change for the sky. Pan over to the right, we'll test zoom on that cell tower there. So telephoto lens goes to 2.5 times here on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and then 2 times on the 12 Pro. So you can see the differences in that telephoto lens there. And as we pinch to zoom on the 12 Pro Max to go to 7 times digital zoom, and the same thing here on the iPhone 12 Pro, it's 6 times digital zoom versus the 7 on the Pro Max. So you can see what the differences look like there. We'll back out both lenses and do some autofocus tests here on the post. First with the Pro Max. One more time. So really quick autofocus here on the 12 Pro Max as you'd expect. Let's try this on the 12 Pro. Should be the same, exactly the same. There you go, snappy autofocus here on the 12 Pro as well. So let's go ahead and test stabilization. Walk down the stairs. You can see what this looks like here at 1080p. Stabilization should be excellent here on both phones right now. And I'll go ahead and stop here, pan up and pan around into that bright afternoon sun so you can see how it handles that. Everyone, so here are with the same test in the park again, and this time we have it at 4K 30 frames per second. Again, starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on each. I'll pan down and see what that looks like, and pan up so you can see it adjust for the exposure in the sky again. And I'll go ahead and change to the main lens on the 12 Pro Max and on the 12 Pro there. See what that looks like. Same thing. See it go light then really blue in the sky as I pan around. Pan over here to the right, we'll test the zoom here at 4K. So 2.5 times telephoto still on the Pro Max and 2 times on the 12 Pro. And we'll zoom all the way into 7 times digital on the Pro Max, 6 times digital on the 12 Pro. See the differences there. And back them both out. Test autofocus here at 4K. Still really snappy. Really nice blurred out background, natural bokeh there on the Pro Max. Should be the same here on the 12 Pro. Yep, so really fast autofocus. Really nice blurred background or shallow depth of field there. And again, we'll test stabilization this time at 4K. So stabilization should still be looking good here, even at 4K on both phones. But let me know if you see any differences, or anything else you might see here. And we'll pan around the park one more time in 4K. Hey everyone, so here's the front-facing video from the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 12 Pro. This is 4K 30 frames per second, and this should probably be looking identical. At least it should be, same cameras. But let me know what you think here as I pan around so you can see how they adjust for the changing lighting conditions and exposure with that afternoon sky behind me now. And we'll keep panning around so you can get a sense for how it handles the changing lighting conditions here from the front-facing cameras on both phones. And I'll go ahead and walk to test stabilization. So let me know what you think here. Do you see any differences? Because they really should be looking the same here. And you should be getting a different little bit of light here, more of that afternoon light coming in. So you can see how that changes things here. So there's a front-facing camera on both these phones. Hey everyone, so here's a low light test between the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 12 Pro. Starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on both. This should be looking pretty much the same, as the ultra wide angle lenses are the same. But we'll go ahead and move into the main lens here. And then pan up into this bright light to see how they handle that light and any kind of lens flare that you might see there. And I'll pan back this way. And we'll test stabilization. And also to see how it handles the light transition from that brighter light over to this darker area here. So both of these should be doing pretty well from a stabilization standpoint, but do pay attention for any kind of micro jitters that you might see. That tends to be more pronounced here in low light. And as you're on the corner, you can see it's a lot darker out this way. And all we have are these sidewalk lights, but we'll pan up into the night sky where it's much darker. And then over here to the left where there's a bit more light again. So there's a low light test here in 1080p on both phones. Hey friends, so here's the same test, except this time at 4K 30 frames per second. Again, starting out with the ultra wide angle lens on both. As we pan over to the right, I'll move into the main wide angle lens on each phone. And then I'll pan up here again into that bright light so you can see how that handles that in 4K. And we'll pan over this way and do some stabilization at 4K, which should still be pretty good as they're both fully stabilized at 4K. But pay attention to the light transition here as we get into this darker area. Usually in 4K, it'll get a little bit darker and it'll look darker than that 1080p footage. As you're around the corner, you can see how dark it is now. And we'll pull up here, pan up into that night sky where it's much darker. And then over here to the left where there's a little bit more light again. So there's a low light test here in 4K.
Downtown, I got that heat, let's go.
Hey friends, so here's some front-facing footage and some low light on the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 12 Pro. Now, of course, we're in a little bit of more light here, but we'll start to transition over to the darker area. But I want to show you what this looks like with the bright lights behind me. And this is in 1080p, but we'll test some 4K coming up. And as we start to walk, we'll test the stabilization here on each of these front-facing cameras, which should be looking exactly the same because they are the same camera. But we're walking over to a little bit darker area here. And I'll be approaching a fountain so we can test the audio to see how that sounds against the sound of my voice. And I'll pull up here and I'll pan around to the brighter light behind me. You can see what that looks like back there, and pan back this way and step back into the darker area so you can see what that looks like here. So let me know what you think about the front-facing cameras here at 1080p. Hey everyone, so here's the same test, this time at 4K 30 frames per second on each of the front-facing cameras. Again, decently lit situation here. Bright lights behind me, you can see how that's handling it. It looks pretty good. You don't see a lot of lens flaring out of those bright lights. And I'll start walking to this stabilization again. So let me know if you see any kind of a difference between these cameras, because they should look exactly the same, being the same camera. But let me know if you see anything different from the 1080p footage. And again, we'll be passing by the fountain so we can get another sound of that audio, see how that sounds against my voice. And again, I'll pan around. You can see the light transitions and the bright lights again behind me, which actually is doing really, really good, because those are some really, really bright lights, and most phones will flare those lights out pretty badly. So we'll pan back around, get into the darker area here again, just to finish this video out. So let me know what you think about the 4K footage here from the front-facing cameras. Hey everyone, so now that you've seen all the photos and videos for yourself, what do you think? Do you think the 12 Pro Max clearly outperformed the 12 Pro? Could you tell differences in low light, in video stabilization, in zoom quality? Because those are all the things that the 12 Pro Max are supposed to be clearly better at than the regular 12 Pro. As far as me personally, I couldn't tell obvious differences, at least not consistently, photo to photo, video to video. There may have been minor differences, but that could be just because it was taken a few seconds apart, slightly different angles, because I'm human after all. But nothing glaringly different about the 12 Pro Max versus the 12 Pro, at least to my eyes. I would really have to examine very, very closely, and even then, differences are marginal. Sure, the 12 Pro Max has better zoom capability, but only by a small margin. And the low light performance was pretty close to me. I couldn't really tell much of a difference there. And as far as video stabilization, I really couldn't tell that much of a difference there either. So if I didn't know that the 12 Pro Max was supposed to be better than the 12 Pro, I really wouldn't see any difference here. They pretty much perform the same, at least to me. So if you're thinking about getting either of these phones and camera quality is really important in your decision, then I wouldn't make that as a part of your decision too much. They pretty much are going to perform relatively the same. I would just concentrate on price and maybe the size of the phone and make your decision from there. But that's just what I have to think about how each of these phones performed. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you saw any differences that I may not have, I'm always interested to hear from what you have to say and what you think. So let me know. Let's continue our discussion in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.